Wagwan and what's up, it's Josh, welcome back. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing like a top 10, but it's really a top 6 because we are only ranking 6 things. But we are ranking the 6 character arcs or character stories of Young Justice Season 4. Obviously, this season was done a little bit differently. It was split into 6 different character arcs from the main core Young Justice team. Those being Artemis, Aqualad, Miss Martian and Connor Kent, which did get an arc together because it's technically 7 members. Nightwing, Rocket and Zatanna. Basically, this is based off my personal opinion. There is 100% biased in this. But I tried to keep it as non-biased as possible. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. If you guys enjoy, remember to like and subscribe. So at number 6 we have Aqualad. It does tell a great story, but I feel like the bigger focus of this story is around Connor and Garfield, and I feel like Aqualad is truly neglected throughout this 4-episode arc. I would say a good 2.5–3 episodes of this arc are focused more around Connor and Garfield, and even a bit on Halo, and the bits we do get of Atlantis and Aqualad really just don't add up to the rest of the season. So we're seeing this story about the true King Arion, who was the original leader of Atlantis and Vandal Savage's descendant, and he's basically turned back up and he fills the prophecy of the true king of Atlantis. And the story around this is they're all trying to find out if this is the real Arion. He's been assumed dead for many years, thousands of years even, and they don't believe that he can be back. So Aqualad goes on a bit of a mission to find Arion's crown, to put it upon him to see if he is the true king. However, this story just does take a bit of a back foot, considered with all the Connor and Garfield we're getting. Connor in the Phantom Zone going, trying to figure out where he is, and Garfield with his depression. And it just does sit on the back foot, and although it was interesting and it did have really cool fights and a good story behind it, the story to me just didn't really add up. Where it turns out that Arion is a clone and Ocean Master's consciousness has been put into him. However, this big plan by the Light, it goes wrong and they lose. But we never hear why they wanted it. Obviously they wanted to conquer Atlantis, but there was no sort of second play to it. We see the Light in these episodes and then they don't show back up for the season, and it felt like a very one-off play that didn't make sense. And I feel like that really takes away from the story because we never really get to hear any more of this. I've been saying this through season 3 and season 4, the Light really have taken a back step. And it's been a bit of a shame because they have been this sort of, although we call them the Light, they've been in the shadows and been the big enemy of Young Justice since season 1. And although I'm glad we're focusing on new threats, I would like to see them maybe in season 5 as a bigger, more prominent threat. At number 5, I've put Rocket. This arc has some great characters, a good introduction to them, as well as continuations to characters we already know. Interesting side plots and different stories. It focuses on one main story and then a lot of the smaller ones, which was really cool. But again, it suffers from kind of Aqualad syndrome. It doesn't have a lot to do with Rocket, and this one on a little bit of a sort of a worse basis in my opinion, because her whole reason for being on New Genesis is to for a treaty for the Justice League with her, with them and the New Gods and Earth, just as a protection treaty, I believe, against Darkseid and Apocalypse. And they're bargaining this treaty, but it could have genuinely been anyone. It didn't have to be Rocket, but she's there. We get to see some really cool stuff. We get introduced to Razor, and he becomes like this dual-wielding Lantern of the Red Lantern and Blue Lantern Corps, and that was probably one of my favourite episodes throughout the season. We get some really good dialogue between her and the new god, whose name I can't remember, who is the son of Darkseid, and I feel like this is the only bit that progresses Rocket's story, because her dealing with him and his demons, I feel, helped her deal with her child as well and make decisions for her child when she got home. And that was the sort of starting point for her story. We see her and her child and how she's getting him ready to go and be with her dad while she's going on this journey for a couple of days. And I feel like the only thing that progresses through her story is her understanding and patience of that. Other than this, the fights and the other characters in this arc are amazing, and it does really tie in to just a little bit. It doesn't tie in too strongly with Connor and the Phantom Zone. And I really appreciated that this wasn't an overbearing thing, and it did work really beautifully. At number 4, I have put the Miss Martian / kind of Superboy story arc. This is the first story arc we see. It is a nice start to the season. It continues well from last season. And this is the arc that really starts the whole main story throughout the season. And it works perfectly. You know, we're dealing with the wedding of Connor and Megan. And obviously we know Connor dies. And it just... From showing it from their perspective, and Miss Martian, Superboy, and it's all building up to this big wedding in episode 4, and then he dies, and to deal with that grief, and to then see Miss Martian and Beast Boy throughout the season works beautifully. It perfectly introduces new / old heroes and villains in this season. You know, Alpha Ak especially. We're seeing, although we did see him in season 3, we're seeing him again. He's popped back up. We're seeing that real hatred for the other coloured Martians, and we get to see this full circle in the final when he does the work for Darkseid, and Darkseid gives him his own planet for the White Martians. As well as we get to see the start of Lord Zod and the Legion of Superheroes, and although they're kind of more of a mystery element to them, we get that introduction to them, and it really gives that starting point. My only sort of gripe with this arc is it feels like the only one that doesn't sit too well on its own. It is very reliant in my eyes for the rest of the season. That makes it greater than what it would be on its own. It is a very powerful arc on its own, but I feel like there is a lot to learn. We're dealing with a lot of Mars stuff. The greatness of this arc is really brought on by all the other pieces from the rest of the season, and it really perfectly starts that build up to that. So that's why it's not further up in the list. At number 3, and as much as I hate this, I do in my head have to rank it down here, is Nightwing's arc. Now this is probably the most beautiful representation we've ever seen of Nightwing. I love these episodes to pieces, but they're just a bit too close to the final and rely a lot on concluding the season for it to get extra points. So I have had to deduct the final episode from the arc, because I am going to count it as a 4-episode arc instead of a 5, and because we don't see the conclusion to it in the arc, I have taken points off because it isn't based solely around Nightwing, and it does really suck. But this arc does so many things perfectly. It brings the whole team together again, minus Megan for obvious reasons. They didn't want to get her hopes up. But that is mentioned in the episode. It links the whole season together perfectly. We see Dick's detective work do this over the first and second episode, where he figures out where Connor is, what Rocket saw on New Genesis, where Impulse is, the Legion of Superheroes, what Superman's hiding, and this detective work is probably only rival to Batman's, and honestly I felt it was on the same level as Batman's. These episodes, it was so on form, and it really highlighted how good of a hero Dick is. We get this amazing tie-in to and lots of callbacks to the season, like Clarion and the little monster things, the like whatever they are, what they find in the Zatanna arc. a lot of callbacks to that, and it was really cool, as well as seeing them go into the Phantom Zone to save Connor. And I really liked the symmetry to what they were doing and what McGahn was doing in, I think it was episode 4, where they've got into the Phantom Zone. McGahn's trying to get them out of the Phantom Zone, and it's just really beautiful that they've hidden it both from each other, and actually they are working to the same goal. I felt it's quite hard because 1, 2, and 3 on this list I loved to pieces. They were the best, and it was really hard to rank them. But I did decide to put this one here just on the sole fact it was so close to the final, and I felt it took away from Dick's arc. And the last thing I'd like to say is we do get a couple leadership moments from Dick in these episodes, and it was really cool to see, as Batman really, in the first season, wanted Dick to be the leader of the Young Justice team, but Dick gave it up to Aqualad, and it was quite nice to see Dick get his hero moment and leader moment in these episodes. At number 2, I have put Artemis. There is a little bit, quite a lot of bias in this. I do love the character, always have loved the character, but honestly, this arc was fantastic in every way. It focuses solidly on Artemis and her stages of grief. Obviously, for this is the second time we're seeing Artemis lose someone. First time she lost Wally, this time she's lost Connor. And we're really seeing this different side. She was very sad about Wally for a very long time, and we're actually seeing the multiple stages of grief with Artemis this time, which was quite nice. There's a solid story and flashbacks all focused around Cheshire and Artemis and their relationship, their life with Sportsmaster, and it really focuses on Artemis trying to get Cheshire back to the light side and to be able to look after her daughter. And these are like for 2 of the main stories we're getting around this, her grief and Cheshire, and in the third one we're dealing with Onyx and Cassandra Savage, who are both apparently defects from the League and are trying to join the Justice League, but realistically they are being played by Cassandra to try and get the intel that the Justice League have on them. We really see these 3 arcs all play out at the same time, and it works so well. It's very combat focused. We see some elite side characters. We see Orphan, we see Halo, we see Arsenal, we see Arrowette, we see the other Harpers, Lady Shiva, fake Spider-Man, Rigor Mortis. We see so many side characters, Sportsmaster, and it really focuses around this big thing that they've done. There's so much combat, a lot of fighting. It was amazing, and we're seeing some old tricks come out to play. It turns out that Cassandra Savage used a glamour charm on herself to make her look half blind, lose an arm, to try and gain the justice for Justice League. And it works beautifully because obviously that's the trick Tigress used back in the day when she faked her death. As well as we find out that Orphan is Lady Shiva's daughter, who Lady Shiva mutilated and trained into this big killer. And it is just a beautiful arc. It doesn't focus at all on the main story, and I know I've criticised the other arcs for focusing too much on the main story, but at this point in the season I feel like that was the best, and we get the best out of the character and the character arc from that. And I do truly believe that this is one of the strongest arcs in this season. Let me know what you guys think. At number 1, if you haven't guessed it already, is Zatanna. This arc was perfection, and it took me by surprise. A lot of shows and TV and movies and stuff really struggle with magical characters, and I feel like this arc nailed Zatanna perfectly. It focuses on Zatanna being a teacher to the new students, and without rushing into it too much, it shows these new students' powers. It gives an explanation on what they can do, what they can't do. And I really appreciated that, to see the different sides of it. We even get an episode which at first I wasn't a big fan of, based around the students overcoming their fears and stuff, which was really nice. As well, in this arc we get some great cameos and amazing villains. The child, who was descended from the Chaos Lords to replace Clarion, was terrifying, evil, and just this around about perfect villain I felt for this arc. And it is the only real 5-episode arc this season, and it was amazing. We got to see other magical characters as well. We saw the Phantom Stranger, Madame Xanadu, Etrigon, Dr. Fate. You know, we're seeing all of this, as well as it ties into the rest of the league. We see that the child is quite a big threat, and in the last episode we see that she the whole league is needed to take her down. We see Red Tornado and Terra and Superman and all of these other league members dealing with events happening around the world due to the child's power. And we even see it in Aqualad's arc. It pops up in the 2nd episode where we're seeing the red lava tornado and that Atlantis are trying to protect themselves from that. It ties into the main story nicely and not overwhelmingly, quite like Rockets in my opinion. We find out through Clarion and Zatanna that Connor is still alive, and then it leads to Clarion being able to talk about the Phantom Zone in Nightwing's arc, and it ties in perfectly to that. As well as the other big thing that really made this arc amazing were the flashbacks to Vandal Savage and Clarion and everything that happened before what's happening now. You know, we're seeing thousands of years into the past. We're knowing about Arion, which tied in nicely to the next arc with Atlantis and Vandal Savage, and how him and Clarion met and how they were kind of like the first members of the Light. And it really but talks about this balance in the universe with Chaos Lords and Lords of Order. And we see at the end of this arc, Vandal Savage actually makes a deal with the Chaos Lords to stop backing the child and her power. And this is really sort of a big play that stops the child at the end and gets Clarion the upper hand, because she had more power. When the backing went, they went to the same power level, but Clarion's experience and everything, and his backing with Fate and Zatanna and the team, really pushed him over to this edge on the child, and that's why they won. And then we see even one of Zatanna's students really does this last blow. She destroys her anchor to the world using one of her spells, and she really saves everyone. And we get this hint as well to Granny Goodness with one of the students, because she doesn't get kind of accepted as a kind of a pass on, I guess, the magical course. So she then leaves, and she is then teased at the end of the season as one of the Furies for next season as a villain, which was really cool. And I just think this arc was perfect and couldn't have been done any better. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed. This has been my list. I do want to say I did enjoy every single one of these arcs. Season 4 was out of this world. Probably one of the best seasons we got. Probably just behind Season 1. I do have a really soft spot for Season 1. But I did really enjoy each of them. There's no hate to any of these arcs in this not tier list, but ranking video. So I just think some of them were better than the others, but I did love every single one. And these are interchangeable, like I mentioned earlier on. 1 to 3 were really hard to rank. They were just prime DC TV, and I loved it to pieces. But let me know down in the comments below what you guys thought. What would you change? What would you keep the same? Do you agree with my list? And if you guys enjoyed, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.